Yeah, so in this video I'm just going to be showing you the fundamentals of Java, and then we'll make a small program out of the fundamentals I teach you. So I'll create a project using the Eclipse IDE. So I'll create a new Java project. I'll call it my first project, and then we can click finish here. We have a red exclamation mark. That's because we don't have a proper Java runtime library for it. I didn't mean to click remove. Okay, let's just add JREs. Or add, okay. Edit, alternative, finish, apply, close. Okay, now that this red exclamation mark is gone, we can create a package. So I'll just call this fundamentals. And we also have this module info.java. I think that got auto-generated. We can just delete this. We don't need that. So in this fundamentals package we created, we can just create a class. So I'll just call this hello world. And within this hello world class, we can write all our Java code that we want to execute. So the first thing we want to write in our Java program is a main method. So the main method signals the entry point for your application. So if I write main and then click control space, it would give me a suggestion and it would fill out the main method like this. So anything that we write within this main method will be executed in our program when we click run. So the first thing I want to do is just print out the message hello world. It's something very common, a lot of programmers do. So I'll save this file and then I can click run, and we see we have a hello world printed out. Now we probably want to do something just more than printing something out. We probably want to store some data, and the way we do that is in Java we have two types of data: primitive and reference data types. So primitive data types are data types that are built into Java's programming language fundamentally. So it's not anything that we would have to create ourselves. So these 8 data types are as follows. We have integer, we have shorts, we have byte, we have long, we have char, we have float, we have double, and we have boolean. So these 8 data types here are the fundamental data types that are built into Java. Now each of these have a distinct purpose. So for integers it's 32-bit non-decimal numbers. Short is 16-bit non-decimal, bytes 8-bit, and long is 64-bit. Floats are 32-bit, but these are decimals. And doubles are 64-bit, but they are also decimals. And boolean, we could just take this as a 1-bit because it just says true or false, so you could think of it as that. So then we can define these variables as such. We can have int, so we can say our variable name, we'll just call it a, we'll say it's equal to 10. And we can have short, b is equal to 4. We can have byte, c is equal to 2. Long, I don't know, d is equal to something really weird, or something really long like that. And so each of these can be defined like as such. And then if we wanted to simply do some calculations with them, we can create like another variable, say like int sum is equal to a plus b. And then we can do something like a system.out.println and then just print out the sum. So you can see we get 14 here because we added the 4 and we added the 10. Now we can also do some other things, like we could do stuff like if statements and conditionals. So we say if a is greater than 9, which it is, then execute this block of code. Otherwise, we would execute this block. So here we could just say a, or we could put the variable a is greater than 9. And here we could say the variable a is less than 9. And so since a is equal to 10 here, if we run this, we can get the variable a is greater than 9. However, if we removed the 10 and put a 9 instead, now a is not greater than 9, because 9 is not greater than 9, we would get the variable a is less than 9, which isn't even true, because then we would say less than or equal to 9, or something like that, yeah. So aside from if statements, we also have loops. So this is how we loop things in our code if we want to do something that's, executed 100,000 or even 1,000,000 times. We don't want to write code that's going to be manually written 1,000,000 different lines. We would rather use a loop to do that. So there are 4 different kinds of loops in Java. We have the while loop, the do while loop, the for loop, and the for each loop. So the while loop is quite simple. It uses the same kind of convention as the if statement. So instead of if, we have while, and we could say while a is greater than 9, then this code will continue to execute. We also have do while loops. We could do this, while a is greater than 9. So what this does, it's very similar to the while loop, but the do while loop would execute first and then check while a is greater than 9. If it isn't, then it would just continue onwards. If this condition is satisfied to be true, it would keep looping. Then we have for loops. So for loops are also quite simple to understand, but the syntax is a little bit more tricky at first. So what you want to do is define a variable within your for loop, and then we're going to say while it's less than, say, a certain number, then we increment it. So if we do this and we say we could just print out I, it'll just print out I from 0 through 9. So if we just print this out, you can see we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. For each loops are a little bit more complicated. It's to deal with sets of data like arrays or different types of objects and stuff like that, so I'll leave that out for now. But typically these are the loops that you will see. In fact, do while loops are a little bit more rare. You would mostly see for loops and while loops the most. So moving on from those, we have now arrays. So arrays are used to store basically a clump of data. So if you have 3 integers that you would like to store, and you wouldn't want to create 3 different variables for each, because say the variables are quite related to each other, you can then create an array. So we could say int this, say array of numbers is equal to, and then we can define it as such, say 1, 2, and 3. So now we have an array of numbers that each have their own distinct values. So I can now go like system.out.println and say array at index 0, and then we can print this out, say array of numbers at 0. So then if we show this, we can say print it out. The value at index 0 is 1, which is exactly as we put it. But there's also some cool or little things you need to be careful about when dealing with arrays. So let's just do this, 1, 2. And you'll notice it'll print out the index of the arrays there as well. But if we drew this one more time and try at index 3, you'll notice an error that would happen. We get an index out of bounds exception, and that's because the array is trying to fetch information that it doesn't have access to. So in the memory, it's basically, you could think of 3 lockers that are side by side, and they each store the 1, 2, and 3. And then when you're grabbing the 4th index, as we start counting at 0, that is not part of the lockers that we have allocated to this array, and so it gives us an out-of-bounds exception. It's basically saying you're trying to access memory that you don't have, authorization to access for this variable. And so that's why we get these errors, and you got to be a little bit careful about those when dealing with arrays. But the thing about this is you can also just do a for loop in this by doing, or a for each loop, and you can actually print out the values of the array like this. And so this is why for each loops can be useful. It's a little bit more concise than using for loops, especially when you're dealing with stuff like arrays like that. So that's the fundamentals of basically everything you can possibly need to build a basic program in Java. So let's get started with that.